Hello, I am Nathan Eaton, the Assistant Director of Financial Aid, and this is our financial aid presentation we offer for parents, guests of students, and also it might be of interest to spouses. Also, if you're a student, you are, of course, more than welcome to view this presentation as well. There is some overlap with our main student presentation, but we do go a little more in depth in some items that might be of interest to parents. So if you do have any questions, our contact information is at the end. Thank you very much. So for this slide, we're discussing kind of how aid is determined and how much a student gets is determined. So there's various different factors. Obviously, the general information put on the FAFSA is one of the biggest factors to decide whether a student qualifies for grants or student loans, things like that. If a student already has a bachelor's degree, then they no longer qualify for grants. They only qualify for student loans at that point going forward. Also, if a student is dependent or an independent student decides how much loan eligibility they can receive, and then also their year in college, so freshman, sophomore, junior level, also decides how much loan eligibility they can qualify in any given semester. And all of those are dictated by the Department of Education as far as what those amounts are based on the information given on what a student can receive. So on this slide, I just want to discuss what decides if a student is independent or dependent. We often get questions of this, especially from parents, wanting to know why their student is still considered a dependent student and why their information has to be on the FAFSA. So for the upcoming 2020-21 school year, for that FAFSA, if a student has to be born before January 1st of 1997 to be considered a dependent student by just their age alone. Now there's other factors, so if a student is married, they're considered an independent student. If the student has a child or a dependent that they provide the majority of support for, so more than 50% of the support, that can make them an independent student. If they're a veteran, that can also make them an independent student. And then there are some other situations where if like the student was considered a ward of the court, obviously if a student's considered an orphan, things like that can make them an independent student as well. Something to keep in mind, the FAFSA rules are pretty cut and dry. So even if a student does not live at home with a parent, if they live on their own and pay their own rent and things like that, if that student was not born before January 1st of 1997 and they can't answer yes to any of the other dependency questions that would make them independent, they're still required to include parent information on their FAFSA, even if they're not living at home. Now, there are some special circumstances where we are able to do what's called a dependency status or dependency override appeal for a student. Now, these are usually more in extreme circumstances. So if there's an issue of abuse in the household, and generally the guidance is it'd be unsafe for the student to get that information from the parent. There's a fairly in-depth process where the student has to document the situation in order for us to override that requirement to have parent information included on the FAFSA for that. There's also other special circumstances where if the household situation has changed, so say the student is dependent and one of their parents were to be laid off from work, it is possible through a special circumstance process where we could update the FAFSA to reflect the current situation. Since, as you know, when you fill out your FAFSA, it's looking at information from 2 years ago. It's very possible your situation has changed since then. That might increase eligibility for financial aid. So if you are aware that someone's making less or has stopped working, whatever the reason may be, please reach out to us and we can see if that would fit your criteria to do a special circumstance. Now, some general information on student loans. Obviously, we always want the student to use the grant money scholarships, the quote-unquote free money first that they don't have to pay back once they are done with school. Any grants or scholarships will automatically be applied and accepted on a student's account, but then the student will have to make a decision as far as their student loans are concerned. We'll always offer the maximum loan eligibility every given semester, but the student still has to go and actually accept that if they're wanting that full amount. Now, if a student isn't wanting the full amount, they can always contact us and we can reduce how much is offered based on how much they're actually needing. So if they only want half their loan, By all means, we do not want a student to take more loans than they need to. Just reach out to us and we can help you through that process to reduce those loans. So this slide gives you a overview of just those different loan amounts in any given semester. So as a dependent student, a freshman can get $2,750, while an independent student can get $4,750. And then that progresses up each semester, the sophomore level, junior level, but then the junior and senior level loan amounts for a given semester or year will remain the same for them. So that's just there to kind of help you plan accordingly as you're going through the process. Now, something to note on that is the federal government does charge a loan processing fee on this federal student loans. So there's usually a little over 1% that's taken out of that loan before it's actually applied toward the bill as part of that loan fee the Department of Education takes. Now, when you're reviewing your loan eligibility, generally you're going to see your loans divided into two different kinds of loans. So part of your loan eligibility will be in a subsidized loan, and then part of your loan eligibility will be in an unsubsidized loan. And essentially what that means is on the subsidized loan, the government's actually waiving or paying the interest for the student while they're in school. So that subsidized loan does not build any interest while the student is in school. While the unsubsidized loan, as soon as it's processed and paid out to the student, interest will start to build in that loan while they're in school. Now, the subsidized loan will start interest after the student has finished school, but it is always considered the better of the two loans offered since no interest is building for that. Now, the current interest rate for undergraduate student loans is 4.529%. Usually in late April, early May, we'll have the new interest rate that'll start July 1st for the next school year. So we'll get those announced as soon as we have more information. If you're a graduate student, those loan interests are 6.079% currently. Now, some important processes as part of the student loans. As I mentioned early in the presentation, the student always has to accept their student loan every semester. For that, we want the student to be aware that they're accepting a loan every semester. They're aware of how much they're taking out. So we do require them to accept their student loan every semester they want to receive one. And also that loan will not appear as pending on their actual statement until they have accepted it. We do also ask generally for incoming students, even if you have taken out a loan previously, we'll often ask you to do new entrance loan counseling or a master promissory note, as sometimes the master promissory note does expire, things like that. And the loan can't be processed until all required items are completed. Now, if you are a parent of a dependent student, you do have the option to apply for what's called a Parent Plus loan. So essentially the Parent Plus loan is another federal loan through the federal government where the parent is actually applying for a loan on behalf of the student. Now the interest rate is higher on the Parent Plus loan. Currently it's 7.079%. Like I said, we'll know end of April, early May what the new interest rate for next school year will be. There are some steps to complete. There is a credit check involved. So it is different from a federal student loan because student loans, there's no credit check involved for those federal student loans, but a Parent Plus loan, there is a credit check involved. Now, if the parent is denied based on their credit for a Parent Plus loan, that does allow the dependent student to borrow a student loan as if they were independent. So essentially what that means is they get an additional $2,000 in unsubsidized loan per semester if a parent is denied a Parent Plus loan. So often we do recommend, even if you believe you will be denied, it is an option to get your student additional eligibility by just applying and then getting denied to get some of that additional loan eligibility. But something we always like to remind parents for this on the Parent Plus loan, because there's often confusion on this, is it is a loan under the parent and it'll always be attached to the parent. So once it comes to repayment for that loan, it is under the parent's credit and things like that to handle that repayment process. The student's not responsible for that loan officially. Obviously, you might make an agreement where the student pays you back, but as far as the Department of Education is concerned, it's the parent's responsibility to pay back that loan, and there's no way to transfer that to the student. So another alternative, if you need additional funding to either fill your gap for tuition fees, or if you're needing a refund to help with living expenses. Many students will apply for private student loans. This is handled obviously through different banks and credit unions. You'd apply with them directly. There is a credit process as part of this where they do a credit check. Many students will not qualify on their own, so a lot of the private loan lenders do require them to have a co-signer, which can obviously be a parent, another family member, a spouse, things like that. A benefit of a private loan, so sometimes why parents might choose to have their student take out a private loan instead of a Parent Plus loan is, as the student, they're the one applying for that student loan or that private student loan. So the loan's primarily under their name. Obviously, as a co-signer, the parent would be responsible as well, but many of those banks allow after so many payments to release the co-signer, so then the loan would be just under the student for that point going forward. So often parents will look at private student loans in place of the Parent Plus loan just because the student has more responsibility for that loan as a result. If you are looking for more information on private student loans, you can go to our website and search for private education loans. We have a site kind of describing more details. There's also a link to what's called Elm Select, which actually allows you to go in and compare different lenders and actually apply if you do decide to apply for the private student loan. Now, as we mentioned earlier, we always want students to use the free money first, those scholarships and grants whenever possible. So if you go to our website and just search for scholarships, that'll bring up information on the Methodist College scholarships from the institution itself. Our current application for fall 2020 is currently open and will be closed at the end of April. And then we will actually reopen our application in the fall for students to apply for scholarships for the spring semester. So just keep that in mind. If you do miss the deadline for applying for a scholarship for the fall semester, you'll have another opportunity, usually in October, to apply for the spring semester for our institutional scholarships. Also on our website, we have a list of private scholarships that you can apply for. Definitely keep an eye on those as quick as you can. A lot of those deadlines are already have passed or quickly approaching for those private scholarships. That's common for private scholarships, is usually they become open in January, February, and then usually most of those are closed by end of April, May area. So just something to keep in mind going forward as well as far as applying for scholarships. So the next item to discuss is just the cost for attending the college. Different programs have different requirements, so there are different tuition fees for different programs at the college. On the orientation website, we do have a document on there giving the different cost sheets for the tuition fees for our different programs. So all you need to do is open that document, find the program your student is in, and that'll give you the tuition fees per credit hour for that program in a given semester. And that's just there to give you a general guideline as far as how much their tuition fees will be in any given semester, or if they anticipate how many hours they'll be taking, you can get a projection going forward as well. Now for student loans, we always like to remind students they have to at least be in 6 credit hours to receive a student loan. And once you're taking 6 hours, you essentially qualify for your maximum student loan in that semester. With that in mind, if you know your student's going to be taking less than full time consistently, we always recommend for them to come talk to us just to kind of project out their plan. Because if a student's going less than full time every semester but still taking out their maximum loan eligibility, it is possible they could reach loan lifetime limits before getting to graduation. So we want students to be aware of so they can plan accordingly. That way if they are going to run out, they have as much time as possible to plan for that, or we can help them spread that loan eligibility, may not take their full loan each semester, and save some eligibility for future terms as well. Their financial aid, they'll still receive, even if they are less than full time. Generally for a grant assistance, it's just going to adjust based on how many hours they're in, but there's a lot more detail about that in the general financial aid presentation for the students that you can view as well. Now, it's not uncommon for many students, even if they accept all the grants and student loans that have been offered to them, to still have a due balance left after all their aid has been applied. You don't have to decide immediately how you want to fill that gap, be it a private student loan, a Parent Plus loan, or even if you decide to make a payment plan. We do like to make everyone aware of that often the aid being offered alone is not enough to cover the full balance in a given semester, which is why we always emphasize to students to keep an eye on their ledgers, to help them know if they do have a due balance so they can plan accordingly and have as much time as possible to plan for that as well. Now, if you do have any questions from this particular presentation, or if you have specific questions to your student, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Our email is listed here and our phone number. I mentioned in the other presentation that we are giving to the students as well. We do recommend at this time, as long as there is a shelter-in-place order for the state of Illinois, to primarily contact us through email. Since most of us are working remotely from home, we don't have access to our work phones or work voicemails right now. So the best way to reach us is through that general financial aid email box that all of us in the financial aid office have access to from home. We do like to remind you though, we tell students if they have specific questions to themselves to email us from their student account. And if you as the parent is emailing, we'd have to have what's called a FERPA release form filled out by the student, giving us permission to talk to you. The same goes for a spouse, or really anyone else other than the student that the student wants us to talk to needs to have that FERPA release form to allow us to talk to those other people. So just keep that in mind if you're emailing for specific information. It might be better to have the student do it and then they can share that information with you. But if they do want you to be able to talk to us directly, they will need to do that FERPA release form for that. That's everything I have for you today. Thank you very much for taking the time to review this presentation. Like I said, if you do have any questions, that's what we're here for. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Have a good day.